Hello everyone, how's it going? And welcome to Wild Rift patch 4.1. I have the official patch notes here and I'm going to be talking to you all about all the changes that's going to be happening in this patch. There's quite a lot of balance changes. There's new items. We've got the new champion coming out. So there is a lot to get through in this video. Obviously, sometimes I like to do the YouTube shorts, but because this is the first time that most people will be seeing the patch notes, I thought I'd do a full rundown this time so I can go a little bit more in depth because there is a lot of things to talk about in this video. So let's get things started. So yeah, Wild Rift patch 4.1 Unleash Chemtech Power. This is going to be a pretty exciting patch, to be fair. I think there's quite a lot of cool things. First up, we have the new champion, which is Urgot, who is releasing tonight. I will be releasing a full guide of Urgot, so make sure you stay tuned for that. He is a Baron lane kind of fighter, but I do think that Urgot is probably going to be best played in the mid lane or even the jungle. I think jungle Urgot might be a thing. We'll have to see how things work because I think Urgot might struggle against most bruisers in the Baron lane that like to go Divine Sunderer, that like to go for Hullbreaker, because he doesn't really get a lot of benefit from, you know, a Sheen item like Trinity Force or Divine Sunderer, and also he doesn't really build Hullbreaker, so he might struggle a little bit, but we'll see how his numbers and everything lie. So I'm really excited to give him a try tonight and show you all what my go-to build and everything is. We got the new Wild Pass, which we got the new Vi skin. We got Superhero Vi, which looks very, very cool. We got the new uncapped levels. So now once you hit level 40, you can get more levels after that now, which is quite exciting. I'm not really too sure how this is going to work. I'm not too sure if it's just going to go 41, 42, 43. I think they said something about you getting stars or something like that. I'm not really too sure how that works, but again, something pretty cool and something for people to grind for. Maybe the more casual players can grind for. We've got events. We just got Urgot's Trivia, which will be released tonight as well with the release of Urgot. Now, here comes the important and exciting part. So let's take a look at some of the champion changes. Now, this is happening to a few champions. Now, what they're trying to do is they're trying to make, in my opinion, the game easier at times. So at the moment with Alistar, you have a combo, which is Headbutt Pulverize. So you click your second ability, head to Headbutt, and then you click the Pulverize, which is your first ability, to knock them up when Headbutt is within, you know, a certain range. You know, sometimes you can mistime this. Sometimes you can accidentally hit Pulverize too early or too late and miss the Pulverize, miss the knockup. But now, while Pulverize is off cooldown, double tapping Headbutt will cause Alistar to cast Pulverize, slamming the ground as he reaches the target. So there's no need to try and time the first ability anymore. There's no need to really use the first ability when you're trying to use the combo. You just double tap the second ability and the game will basically do it for you. I think for someone like Alistar, this is actually not too bad. I think this is okay for Alistar. Obviously, they've done this before on Camille already with her first ability, and there's a few other champions as well, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. But yeah, like I said, this is mainly for the newer players to the game, trying to get them to understand that Alistar does have a combo. Maybe they're realizing that people are missing it a lot. I'm not really too sure, but in the end, I mean, it doesn't really change much to Alistar. Just makes Headbutt Pulverize easier to hit, but again, it doesn't really change the champion too much. It's not a buff or a nerf. It's just a little bit of an ease of execution, I guess you can say, change. Garen surprisingly is getting some buffs. I'm not too sure about this. Obviously, I just released my Garen guide video today, so I'm not too sure exactly on what I think about Garen getting buffed, because I think Garen is in a pretty decent spot already. It's a very, very easy champion to play. What they're doing, they're giving him a little bit of extra movement speed on the first ability, and the second ability, the second damage reduction is going from 60% up to 70%. So he's getting more damage reduction, and also he's getting a little bit more movement speed. Yeah, it's saying like with adjustments and additions to Baron lane, Garen has been struggling to keep up. To lend this noble soldier at hand with buffing some of his mobility and damage mitigation. So yeah, I'm not too sure. I think Garen still does a lot of damage. I think he's already very, very tanky. Obviously, you have to make sure you have to time courage to get this damage reduction. But again, I mean, I'm very surprised he's getting buffed, but maybe with some of the tank items now, we might see like full tank Garen. I don't think so. I think Garen still works very well with like Hullbreaker, Black Cleaver, but maybe items after that. We'll have to see how things go. Jace is another champion that is getting the same change with Alistar. This is even more broken than the Alistar one. The Alistar one is pretty simple. This one is insanely broken because this one is to do with your acceleration gate and your shock blast. So if you don't know, with Jayce in range form, you have your first ability, which is shock blast, which like fires out a little circle kind of pulse fire sort of thing. And then you have the acceleration gate, which allows you most of the time when you walk through them, you get movement speed. But if you use shock blast through the acceleration gate, it actually empowers the shock blast and gives it more damage and more area of effect. But now, while acceleration gate is off cooldown, double tap his shock blast will cause Jayce to cast acceleration gate in front of himself, empowering the shot. So there's no need to press your third ability anymore. You just double tap your first ability and you instantly just cast the acceleration gate, which means that this ability will now be so much harder to understand whether it's going to be an empowered version or whether it's just going to be a normal shock blast, because you can just double tap the ability and it will instantly cast the acceleration gate. At the moment, most of the time with Jayce, what you do is you activate your first ability and then you activate your third ability afterwards, so people can kind of see where it's coming. But now it's like instantly, straight away, you activate your first ability, you double tap it, the acceleration gate is going to come up. This is going to mean that Jayce is going to be, in my opinion, a lot stronger. And also they're nerfing the cooldown of the ultimate as well. So they're giving Jayce a crazy amount of buffs, which I don't really know I don't really know about. I mean, like I said, this is not really a buff, but this just makes Jayce a lot easier to play, and in my opinion makes it a lot stronger to just quickly go for the shock blast burst damage. And that means you don't even have to worry about your third ability. You just double tap the shock blast, you focus on going into range form, you focus on jumping in, because you're going to get that extra movement speed from the acceleration gate. And this means that he can change from his range form to his mini form a lot quicker. So yeah, interesting changes to Jayce. I don't like this one. I don't mind the Alistar one, because the Alistar one in my opinion makes sense, but this one I don't really like personally. But again, I didn't really like Camille's one, and Camille just became like a stronger champion overall, which I think this might be the same with Jayce. Jinx, we're getting some few changes. I'm glad they're changing Flame Chompers, like they're buffing Flame Chompers, because in the early game Flame Chompers seems really weak. This is an interesting one. So the zap, the wind up before casting, is decreased with ability level. So every time you put a point in your second ability, you basically decrease the cast time of the second ability, but now it decreases with attack speed. So fastest when the attack speed bonus reaches 140%. So the more attack speed you get, the faster that your second ability is going to cast. This is pretty big for Jinx. The go-to build off the top of my head at the moment, you can go for like Stormrazor, which has attack speed. You normally go for Infinity Edge, Runa's Hurricane, which also gives you attack speed, and then you go for like your armor pen item, and then maybe you go for Bloodthirster as the final item. Maybe your final item can also be attack speed, but you're building a lot of attack speed in the early game, and to be honest, you don't really put that many points into Zap in the early game, so it might mean that the early game is going to be a little bit stronger because of the attack speed you're getting from Stormrazor, and also Runa's Hurricane means that this ability will cast faster and it makes it harder to dodge. So that means that Jinx can carry on chasing, carry on using her rocket form, and maybe that will be enough to get her a takedown so she gets to recess with her passive. So I think it's a really nice change for Jinx. And like I said, the Flame Chompers getting buffed is also very nice. It's going down by 3 seconds in the early game, the cooldown, and also the root duration is going up by a little bit as well. But in the later stages, it's still the same, 1.75 and 10 seconds, which I think the early game was, I mean, the late game was never the problem. It's just the early game. You feel like you can, you have to use this ability at the right time. If you don't, then you have to wait 19 seconds. I mean, 16 seconds is still a long time. But it's like the root duration is also going up. So it means that Jinx can play a little bit more passive, I guess, in the early game and have a lot more agency to try and maybe look for trades or play a little bit aggressive, because she can use her Flame Chompers to disengage. So some nice changes for Jinx. I definitely gonna have to give her a try again, because she's a very fun champion to play. But at the moment, she's kind of on the weak side, unless you have like a Lulu or Yuumi, and unless you get like an early game lead that maybe you can kind of snowball from there. Kayn is getting more Kayn buffs, but more Kayn nerfs as well. I mean, more blue Kayn buffs and more red Kayn nerfs. I mean, I think this is just becoming a cycle now, to be honest with you. One thing before I talk about these Kayn buffs is that red Kayn is going to become insanely strong now because of this whole tank meta. So even though they are buffing Shadow Assassin Kayn, blue Kayn again, it's not going to be worth it. Darkened Kayn is going to be so much stronger this patch. It's absolutely insane. So they're nerfing the healing ratio of the Darken, which is the red form, not by too much. 3% in early game and 3% in late game, so the healing is not going to be too much. But again, you still have your healing from, you know, if you go for like Death Stance or something like that, if you get a takedown. I think the healing is still insanely strong. Shadow Assassin's extra magic damage ratio is going up by 4% in early game to scaling into 4% extra in the late game, which I guess is quite nice. And adjustments to Shadow Assassin's passive, it resets the cooldown upon entering fights. That now it's reset cooldown upon taking damage from champions. Okay. So this, I'm pretty sure, is so basically what happens with Kayn is that when you play Shadow Assassin Kayn, every single time you enter a fight, you basically get this little bit of extra burst damage on the first instance of damage that you deal. I don't think this is going to mean too much because this is reset upon entering fights, which when you enter a fight, you're going to deal damage anyway, but now it just resets cooldown upon taking damage from a champion. Okay, I mean, I don't think this is going to mean too much, to be honest with you. It just means that I'm guessing this means if you deal damage, then you're not going to get the reset of the Shadow Assassin's passive, I guess. Reset cooldown upon taking damage from champions. So when you take damage from champions, it resets the Shadow Assassin's passive instead of entering combat. So basically it means if you're trying to one-shot someone and if they don't fight back, then you're not going to get the Shadow Assassin passive, the extra damage. I'm guessing that's what it means. I'm not 100% too sure, but from what I'm reading here, I think that's what it, you know, understands. So, I mean, this is kind of a nerf, I guess, the Shadow Assassin Kayn a little bit, but we'll have to see. And then they're also buffing the base damage of the ultimate. So 250, 50, oh yeah, 50 at every single rank. So that means that his early game power is going to be a little bit stronger. But again, you know, with Kayn in the early game, that's not really his strength. He just wants to get as many souls as possible in the early game. And then after the early game, that's when you want to try and, you know, get your form. And then you'll become really, really strong after you get your form. But nice that you can trade a little bit better, I guess, with your ultimate because of the damage buff. Lucian is also getting the same sort of treatment that Jinx has got. Piercing Lights, the first ability, the wind up before casting is decreased as champion level goes up, but now it decreases with attack speed. So this is exactly the same as Jinx with her second ability. Again, Lucian is a champion that you build Solari Chargeblade, which gives you attack speed. You can build Stormrazor, which also gives you attack speed, especially Solari Chargeblade as well. That gives you a lot of attack speed. So I think it's actually really nice buff for Lucian, I guess, because again, you know, you might get Solari Chargeblade. Most of the time you get Solari Chargeblade kind of as a second item. You can just go for like Estus Reaver, Solari Chargeblade. So that means that by the time you get Solari Chargeblade, you're probably going to get more attack speed, which means that your first ability is going to cast better rather than, you know, your champion level, because when you get your second item, you're not that high in champion level. But it's a really, really nice. I really like the scaling that they're giving to Lucian with the attack speed. Again, you most of the time only build one attack speed item. You got Essence Reaver, Solari Chargeblade, Infinity Edge, Shrade's Grudge, and Bloodthirster. So you only have one attack speed item, but still, it's quite nice. We'll definitely have to compare to see what the change is going to be like with Lucian's first ability. Now, this is probably for me the most exciting change of this patch, Pyke. Now, for those who don't know, in PC League of Legends, Pyke mid lane was a big threat for a long amount of time because how much damage Pyke's abilities did to minions. They're now bringing that over to Wild Rifts. Now, when Pyke got released, they basically made it so the first ability and the third ability only dealt 25% damage to minions and monsters. Now, the first ability deals 100% damage to minions and 110% damage to monsters. So they're even trying to make Pyke jungle a thing, which, to be honest, I don't think Pyke jungle will ever be a thing. I just don't think his clear speed is that fast. I mean, maybe it is going to be now, because if you just tap the first ability, you do a little AoE effect instead of holding your first ability and just hooking like one one monster out the camp or something like that. So maybe you can jungle clear speed a little bit quicker with the first ability. But this is a big one. Like I said, 100% damage to minions. And this one as well, you know, deals 25% damage to minions and 25% damage to monsters. You're not going to deal 80% damage to minions and 100% damage to monsters. So that means that in the laning phase, in mid lane, you can clear mid wave very, very fast. You can then look to roam around the map and get advantages, whether that be on the top side of the map or whether that be down the bot side of the map, because Pyke can roam very, very quickly. You know, with his second ability, he has his invisibility. Then he can look to gank lanes, try and land a hook, and he kind of can act like a second jungler in a way. So I'm definitely going to have to try that out and see how it goes. But really, really excited to see, you know, if Pyke lane is going to become a thing. Maybe not that excited because I'm an ADC main, so I'm kind of worried at the same time. But yeah, it's pretty exciting. This is just confusing as hell. I do not understand this at all. I've read this like 20 times now. I don't really know how much gold he gets anyway from his ultimate, but it's like a new thing where Pyke earns 100%, 110% extra gold every time he executes an enemy. There's an assist from a teammate. The lost assisting teammate will get 100% of the additional gold, and Pyke will get 110% of the additional gold. It's like 110% here additional gold, and then you also get 110% additional gold. So it's like, does Pyke get 220% gold now if a teammate assists? Like, I don't know. But then it says every time an enemy champion is defeated by a teammate with the area in the area with an X, Pyke can get 110% the extra gold. Like, I just don't get it. So is it like 330% extra gold because it's getting put 3 times? I have no idea. I'll have to see on the official patch notes because I'm not too sure if this is final with the wording, but the wording is very complicated, as you can tell. If anyone knows, let me know down in the comments. Yeah, very confusing for me. From what I can tell, it's just Pyke gets more gold with his ultimate and your teammates get more gold. So yeah, happy days, I guess. More Pyke buffs, which is quite exciting. Renekton is just getting a little bit of a buff to slice and dice, which means that he can use his slice and dice more often. This will give him a little bit of mobility in the laning phase, which I think is quite nice, because at the moment when you're looking to dash in and try and make trades, you have to wait for a long time to try and dash in and take another trade instead. Because what Renekton likes to do, especially in the early game, is he likes to dash in with his slice, try and trade and do a little bit of damage, and then look to dice back out. If you don't know, Renekton's third ability has 2 charges. So you go in with 1 charge, and if you hit a minion or hit a champion, then you can use dice to get back out. So it's really, really nice to lower the cooldown here by 2 seconds. So it gives Renekton a little bit more chance in the laning phase to make some plays. Shout out to Trottles. Seraphine is finally getting the bug fix that Trottles has wanted for a long time. I'm sure Trottles is a name that some of you would have heard of before. The value of this is kind of confusing, but let me explain. So the value of the second shield of the ability enhancement is now stacking instead of refreshing. So this is a thing that someone called Trottles, which, like I said, some of you might know, but he's a kind of a one-trick Seraphine on both PC League, and also he came over to Wild Rift. And what happens in PC League, basically with the empowered version of the second ability, you basically get double the shield. Now Wild Rift, that doesn't work. You just get 1 shield with the empowered version, and then you just get that little extra heal. But now with Seraphine, the empowered second ability gives you double the shield. Yes, that's right. So you use your second ability, the empowered version, you get 1 shield at first cast, and then you get another shield that stacks on top with second cast. That's as far as I understand. I'm not too sure if this is exactly how it's going to work. Maybe there might have to be a few things where maybe you need to have a shield beforehand to make you double stack the shield. I'm not too sure, but from what I can understand with this second ability, you know, with it now stacking instead of refreshing, I think that's really, really big. Yeah, I think this is really, really big, and this is going to help especially support Seraphine a lot, because support Seraphine now, and it actually feels good to use your empowered version of your second ability, because it means your whole team's going to get a bunch of shielding, which is very, very nice. So very excited to give Seraphine a try if that's exactly what it's going to be. On to Sion. Due to all the crowd control in Sion's kit, he's able to play a major role in team fights for his team. However, he struggles in the lane against some of his peers in the Baron lane. So we got the first ability, maximum charge base damage is going up. So that means that when you reach your maximum charge, the base damage is, wow, actually going up quite a lot in the early game. That's an extra 15 damage in the early game. We got 10 damage, 5 damage, and it's the same in late game. And the stun duration is 1 to 2 seconds. So they're reducing the stun duration ever so slightly, but they increase the base damage a lot, especially in the early game, which will help his laning phase a lot. I think with some of the items that Sion is going to be getting as well, because of all the tank items, most of the time with Sion, you just go like Hull Breaker kind of into full tank afterwards. But now we've got like insane base damage on his first ability is really, really nice. Same with third ability as well. They're also increasing the base damage in the early game by 15, 10, 5, and then keeping the same at maximum rank. So again, that's going to be even crazier. And then Unstoppable Force, Stoppable Onslaught, sorry, not Unstoppable Force. That's Malphite's ultimate. Again, the stun duration is going down. So they're realizing that Sion is maybe offering too much in terms of crowd control in team fights. They're nerfing that a little, but they're giving him a little bit back with a lot of base damage, and especially in the early game. So that means that early game Sion is going to be a little bit stronger. As I mentioned, because you go for Hull Breaker first item, I think this is going to be very, very big. Soraka is also getting a few adjustments. The Queen of Bananas has been performing well in some ranks, but is struggling in higher levels of play. To help Soraka go toe-to-toe with some of the other supports, we're giving her heal a little extra oomph. So let's see what they're changing. So Starfall, the first ability, so the total healing from Rejuvenation, which if you don't know, if Soraka lands her first ability, she gets Rejuvenation, so she kind of heals herself over time. This is going up by quite a lot during the late stages of the game. The early game is staying the same at 60, but it goes up by 10, 20, and 30. And also the AP ratio is going up. I know this is magic level, but this is supposed to be ability power, but you can see the ability power ratio is also going up by 10%. So it means that Soraka could maybe use this a little bit more, especially during team fights, and actually landing your first ability is quite important now to give you that little bit of extra healing. And also building ability power is still going to be the go-to. So like Staff of Flowing Water, Rod of Ages is really nice for Soraka, and items like that. This is a pretty big nerf though. This healing amount in the early game going down by 20 base healing amount is going to hurt her laning phase a lot. Yes, we're getting a little bit of a buff from Rejuvenation, but we're not really going to feel this at all in the early stages, because we're not going to have that much ability power. The value of the first ability is going to stay the exact same. And look at this. This is going down by 20, by 20, 20, and 20. And the ability power ratio is staying the same. I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to make her first ability more impactful, because if you don't know, with Soraka, when you land your first ability and then you use your second ability to heal an ally afterwards, you also give them Rejuvenation. So actually landing your first ability and then using your heal afterwards is now going to be a lot more beneficial. So they're basically making it so Soraka just can't use her second ability over and over again. She has to land her first ability now to get Rejuvenation, and they give that Rejuvenation to her ally to make full benefit of this extra buff. Like I said, it will scale a lot better as well because of the ability power ratio, and also the base damage in the late game is quite high. This might even make it so you even max first ability now. I'm not too sure. I still think max's second ability is still going to be the go-to with Soraka, but first ability is now going to be very, very important. And also because of the the healing that you give to yourself. So yes, very, very interesting. Maybe this makes solo lane Soraka a thing. I don't know. I doubt it, but it might be quite fun. We'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see indeed. Tryndamere, the Barbarian King, hasn't made an appearance in Baron Lane for a while now. I mean, yes, even though you changed the jungle, it's like Baron Lane Tryndamere is kind of useless against most of the champions. We're giving him a few buffs to keep him from being a strong arm by his opponents and falling behind in the early and later stages of the game. So they're reducing the base attack speeds, the attack speed growth by 1 per rank, which is kind of crazy. So he's using like 15% attack speed here, basically. They're giving his passive though a little bit of extra attack speed. So this is basically, as far as I'm aware, I can't really remember Tryndamere that much, but he gains extra attack speed, I think, when he refuels like the bar, if I'm not mistaken. I know he gains extra crit when the red bar gets increased, but I'm not too sure how the attack speed works with that. I think this is just maybe passive attack speed. I'm not really too sure how that works. But I mean, I think this might be like passive attack speed that you get maybe with per level. So this is like 1, 5, 10, 15. I might be correct there. So it means that in the, you're not going to get as much late game scaling, I guess, with the attack speed growth, because like I said, you're losing like 15 at maximum rank, 15% attack speed, but this is quite a big attack speed buff in the early game. You got 10% attack speed buff at pretty much in every single rank, so it's going to be quite nice. Mocky Shout as well, the second ability, the duration is going up to 3 seconds. That's probably the slow. The attack speed is also going to 35%, so again, more early game power there. And the movement speed is going down ever so, well, going down by quite a lot actually. But I mean, to be fair, the movement speed has never really been that important anyway, because with Tryndamere, you got your third ability that you can just keep spinning and spinning, especially if you build Navori Quick Blades. This attack speed is really, really big for the early game, and all this attack speed is also really big as well. Again, the attack speed growth is going down because maybe they just don't want to give him more attack speed over time. But yeah, definitely going to improve his early game. Might even improve his jungle clear speed, even though they kind of... This is a buff to the Baron lane, but it's also going to help his jungle clear speed because his attack speed is going up by quite a lot. So yeah, we'll have to see how that works. Varus is getting, yes, you thought of it, another fucking buff. This is like the 4th buff in a row, probably more than 4 now. Varus has received so many damn buffs, it's absolutely disgusting. There's another buff to his AP build. The Blighted Quiver, so the maximum health damage per Blighted stack, is now going up by 1% every single time. So that means like at maximum stack on your second ability, you're going to get what? How many Blighted Quivers do you get? What, 3? So that's, if you auto attack 3 times, that's 18% maximum health damage. And especially because we're going into a tank meta, I think AP Varus is actually going to be very, very strong. And also the Chain of Corruption, the base damage is staying the same. Or actually, no, it's not staying the same. It's actually going up by quite a lot of later ranks. The base damage and also the AP ratio is going up by 20%. So I guess they really want AP Varus to be a thing. And I think it actually might be a thing because of the way the meta is probably going to go with the tank meta and everything. So we'll have to test him out. Obviously works really well with like Nash's Tooth, Rift Maker, Death Cap, you know, items like that. So we'll have to see how that goes, because these buffs are absolutely disgusting. I don't know. Varus just keeps getting buffed over and over again, and they just really want Varus to work in solo queue, I guess. Warwick, they're doing some changes to Warwick. They say that he's like okay in the jungle, but they want him to also be better outside of the jungle. This is pretty big. So the first ability, you now deal 50% extra damage to minions and restore 50% of the cooldown when killing minions. So it's kind of like a last hit in a way. So if you last hit with your first ability, you're reducing the cooldown of this ability by 50% for the laning phase. I don't know why they're trying to make Warwick a thing in the Baron lane, because his kit doesn't really work for the Baron lane. You know, your second ability is mainly used for ganking, and it's not really used for, you know, laning phase or anything like that. I mean, your first ability is fine, third ability, and even your ultimate, I mean, maybe it's okay in 1v1 situations, but I don't know why they're trying to make Warwick Baron lane a thing. But I think this is a pretty nice buff to Warwick in the Baron lane, because you can just keep spamming your first ability and over again, and just keep lost hitting them and then just keep healing over time. Also, they reduce the mana by a shit ton as well. Like, look at this mana reduction in the early game. Absolutely insane. They're also reducing the damage to monsters. Like, yeah, I don't know. They're just trying to move Warwick out of jungle, I guess, and trying to move it to Baron lane. Again, not really too sure why. But yeah. But they're also just nerfing the second ability as well. So the movement speed is going down, and also the attack speed is going down. So some very interesting changes. I don't know what I think about Warwick being in the Baron lane. Like I said, I think Warwick jungle is just where he fits. Rework the second cast will no longer prematurely end the damage reduction effect. Okay, I'm not too sure how that works. I know with Warwick's third ability, when you use it once, you get the damage reduction. But the second cast will no longer prematurely end the damage. So that means that when you activate the third ability a second time, you'll still have the damage reduction. From what I'm understanding from this, that's kind of what it is. We'll have to see how that works. We'll have to see what change that is. Some ARAM changes, some Earth changes, some One for All changes. Again, I'm not going to look through them. If you want to have a look at them, you can stop at any time during the video. Now we're going to get onto probably the biggest part of this patch, which is the gameplay changes and the new items. First one is Mantle of the 12th Hour. This looks like a pretty nice item, to be fair. I think this item is going to be very, very good. For example, someone like Dr. Mundo. It's not that cheap but not that expensive, kind of a standard price, 2,900. Chain Vest and Negatron Cloak are okay components. This is not an item that gives you health or anything like that. It just gives you 50 armor and 50 magic resist. You can kind of compare this to like Dead Man's Plate and Force of Nature gold, because this is the same amount of gold as Dead Man's Plate. Dead Man's Plate gives you 50 armor, then I think it's like 250 health. So instead of that, you get magic resist instead. This is the lifeline passive, so this means that this does not stack with more of Malmortius and also Sterak's Gauge, so you have to bear that in mind. You can only build this item and you can only get the lifeline passive once. It's a unique passive, so that means you can only build more of Malmortius or Sterak's Gauge or now Mantle of the 12th Hour. So lifeline passive for this item is if taking damage that would lower your health below 35%, you will heal 200 base plus 50% of health over 3 seconds. Also gain 50% slow and slow resistance and 30 movement speed for 3 seconds, which has a 90-second cooldown. Again, like I said, I think this will work really, really well for champions like Dr. Mundo, because when you're low on health, you're probably going to be using your ultimate already, and then on top of your ultimate you're also going to be healing as well from this item. So I think Mundo is pretty much going to become unkillable with this item. I think Mundo's still going to go items like Sunfire Aegis. You maybe build this as a second item now potentially, but Spirit Visage is still very, very strong, and the Spirit Visage will also increase the healing of this item. So I think that it has some very, very interesting and very cool interactions with some champions, like I said, like Dr. Mundo. So that'll be quite interesting. Amaranth Twin Guards. Interesting. So this is like the late game item for tanks. Because you have like the late game items for AP mages like Death Camp, you have late game items like Infinity Edge, which, to be honest, Infinity Edge gets built as a second item anyway most of the time on AD carries. But now we kind of have the late game item for tanks. Now this item is absolutely disgusting. I mean, it costs 3,200 gold. This is going to be the most expensive tank item in the game. Still builds off Chain Vest and Negatron Cloak. 1,400 gold though is a big leap to just sit on these two items for 1,400 gold. But you get 55 armor, 55 magic resist, but the big part is this endurance passive. So while in combat with enemy champions, you gain a stack of endurance, kind of similar to how Riftmaker works. When you're in combat, you gain a stack. When you reach 5 stacks of endurance, you gain size, 20% tenacity, which reduces all crowd control coming towards you, and increases your armor and magic resist by 30% until you leave combat with champions. So if you stay in combat the whole time, you gain size, you gain tenacity, you gain armor and magic resist. Say for example, you have like 150 armor and magic resist, for example, you're gaining an extra 45 armor and magic resist from this item, which is absolutely disgusting. I mean, even just comparing it with the base stats, you're getting an extra 15 armor and 15 magic resist. And again, you getting 5 stacks is not, you know, you've been in combat for 5 seconds. It's not long at all. You know, a Dr. Mundo can easily stay in combat for 5 seconds. A Sion can easily stay in combat for 5 seconds. A Malphite can easily stay in combat for 5 seconds. A Mumu as well, you know, champions like that. There's a lot of champions that can easily stay in combat for 5 seconds. That means you get this insane buff with the endurance passive. So I'm kind of worried a little bit about this item. I think this item is going to be insanely strong. Again, we'll have to test it out to see where it gets built. Is it going to be the late game item? Like I said, I still think there's some other tank items that can be built before this item, but still, it's cool that we're getting some more tank items in the game. This is probably, in my opinion, one of my favorite changes or favorite new items coming into this patch. They're bringing out a new starting item called a Shimmering Spark. So this is a starting item, 500 gold, 50 health, but it has the Immolate passive. So you deal 5 to 10 magic damage to nearby enemies per second. Now, the reason why they're bringing out this item is because they want to try and make tank junglers a thing. This is going to help tank junglers with the clear speed a lot. At the moment, if you're trying to play a tank jungler, if you start with Ruby Crystal, it doesn't benefit you at all. If you're against like an AD or an AP jungler, they can start Longsword or they can go for the Amplifying Tome, and their jungle clear speed is going to be twice as quick as yours. Because you start Ruby Crystal, Ruby Crystal does absolutely nothing at all. So now you actually have an alternative to that. You can now go for this Shimmering Spark if you want to go for like Dr. Mundo jungle or a Mumu jungle, even Nautilus jungle. And this means that you'll be dealing 5 to 10 magic damage to nearby enemies per second. So it's going to help you a lot with that jungle clear speed, especially in the early game. And this means with this being the Immolate passive, this is going to be the new kind of tier 3 item that builds into Bambi Cinder and also Sunfire Aegis, but at the same time they're also changing these items as well. So this build path is now Shimmering Spark, which is 500, and Ruby Crystal, which is also 500 plus 300 gold. So now the total cost goes up to 1,300 instead of 1,100 gold. But as you can see, the magic damage per second now for this item has now gone up to 10 to 20, which is big. I mean, not only is this big for jungle clear, but I think this is also pretty big for tanks in the Baron lane as well, because that means tanks can trade a little bit easier during the laning phase now, because again, the magic damage is not just to minions, it's not just to monsters, it's also to champions. But also this is just in general just really good for pushing the lane as well. So really nice. And they're also changing Sunfire Aegis. Now Sunfire Aegis is, you know, they're interesting changes. Still Bambi Cinder, still Kindle Gem. The total cost is 3,000, which is totally unchanged. So basically, because Bambi Cinder has gone up, they've reduced the total gold that you need. So now you're going to be sitting on a more powerful item, and you don't need that much gold to upgrade this item into Sunfire Aegis. This is the interesting part, though, is all the passive changes. So each stack increases sacrifice damage by now 8% down to 7%. So this means that overall, you're going to be dealing basically less damage to champions overall with the sacrifice damage. The effect of stacking 6 layers, base attacks causes sacrifice damage, base attack causes 50% sacrifice damage. So yeah, you can see here that you're not getting the full benefit of the sacrifice damage here. So again, this is more for nerfing with trading, or like when you get Sunfire Aegis, more to do with like less damage to do to champions. However, you can see here the damage factor to jungle monsters has now gone up by 15%, and the damage factor to minions now scales with level. You can see before it was 115% before, but now it's 175 up to a whopping 250%. I mean, this is going to benefit champions like Shen a lot. You know, Shen kind of struggles a little bit with his split pushing and his wave clear in the Baron lane, but this is going to help him a lot. Like, this is going to help him a lot, and this is going to help a lot of other Baron laners that like to build Sunfire Aegis. Malphite doesn't have the quickest wave clear, now it's going to benefit a lot from Sunfire Aegis. Dr. Mundo as well, you know, other tanks, even someone like Sion can now go for Sunfire, and you can push the wave very quickly. I mean, this is, in my opinion, this is really insane. I think that these changes are going to be very cool. Again, we're not going to get that much from the sacrifice damage because this is quite a big nerf, but I think the changes to like jungle monsters, meaning that you can clear jungle quicker now with Sunfire and also clear waves quicker, might mean that we might get a case of some tanks in the meta. We'll have to wait and see. Searing Crown, this should say new next to it because this is also a new item. This is an item that can stack on top of Sunfire, which is the big thing. So you've got Bambi Cinder again, but this is also Chain Vest as the second item. Plus, it's only 500 gold. That's interesting. So what is the... So total goals of Sunfire is 3,000, and the total goals of Searing Crown is 2,700. Okay. So we get 300 health and 50 armor from Searing Crown. And then we get, and then we get Fiery Touch. So when the basic attack or skill deals damage, it burns a target for 3 seconds, causing magic damage equal to 1.6% of the target's maximum health per second. When used by a ranged champion, this damage is reduced to 0.8. Okay. Deals 150% damage to minions and monsters, and deals up to 125 damage to jungle monsters. Wait, what? But you just said minions and monsters here. Okay, I'm confused because it says deals up to 120. Oh, this is just the maximum cap, I guess. The maximum cap is that it can only deal up to 125 damage per monsters. This is interesting though. So again, this is another item that you can use in the jungle, and like I said, this, from what I remember, stacks also on top of Sunfire Aegis. So there might be a way of you going Sunfire Aegis into Searing Crown, and then you just get an insane amount of damage, and you get an insane amount of jungle clear speed with these items. I think it's very interesting. Like I said, as far as I'm aware, it stacks on top of Sunfire Aegis, because I'm pretty sure I remember them mentioning that in the patch preview, I actually think it might be a case of junglers now go Sunfire Aegis into Searing Crown because of how much insane jungle damage you get and how much clear speed, because clear speed is so important for junglers. So maybe champions like a Mumu, maybe even Nautilus now as well, with the recent buff that he got to his jungle clear speed. I think it might be a thing. And then maybe your third item could be something like Thornmail, or maybe you can go for like a magic resist item. We'll have to wait and see. Speaking of Thornmail, they're also changing Bramble Vest and Thornmail ever so slightly. The growth rate of Bramble Vest is a bit too high. We have balance is value in the early and late stages, making it more line with the positioning of the second level item and encouraging it to upgrade to Thornmail as soon as possible. See, I understand this. The thing is, this happens with all items that give you grievous wounds, or all items that give you anti-heal. Loads of people sit on Oblivion Orb, the tier 2 item, because it gives you grievous wounds. Loads of people sit on Executioner's Calling on AD champions because again it gives you grievous wounds. And it's exactly the same with Bramble Vest. I mean, there's so much healing in the game that it's just a no-brainer to go for like Bramble Vest and just sit on it for like, you know, a little bit of gold. So yeah, I don't really know what to think. This is wrong, by the way. I don't know what Bramble Vest changes is. I don't know if it's just the passive Thorns damage that's going down, but this is wrong and this is wrong. This is actually Thornmail's cost going down. So Thornmail's cost is going down, but health is going down. Again, I don't know what the Bramble Vest changes is. There's a lot of errors in these patch notes. I'm not really too sure why. I'm guessing this Thorn damage is the same though. So you get more passive damage, but it scales less with bonus armor. So it means that you want to upgrade it now into Thornmail, because Thornmail now scales, you know, the passive is lower, but now it scales with bonus health and bonus armor. So now the more health you get, for example, from items like, you know, Searing Crown, and also from items like Sunfire Aegis, which gives you a lot of health, you now benefit more from the passive Thorn damage the more health you get. So as it mentions, you know, they want to try and move the Bramble Vest from being an item you can sit on, and they want Thornmail to be a lot more appealing, so then people build the item overall, which is quite nice. I quite like it. You know, this scaling off bonus health now, if you have 1,000 bonus health, for example, you gain, what is it, you gain like 10 damage, you know, with the passive Thorn damage, which might not seem like a lot, but the passive Thorn damage is basically every time someone hits you. Every time someone hits you, you inflict damage to them. That means you're just going to deal more damage as well, which is quite nice. And also getting 1,000 bonus health is not that difficult. You know, you already got 100 health from Thornmail. You got 300 health here. You can get like a Warmogs as well. Again, it's not that hard to reach like 1,000 bonus health. Force of Nature, they're changing Force of Nature, or I should say updating Force of Nature. I agree that the old passive Force of Nature was kind of trash and no one really built the item. A lot of people built like Abyssal Mask instead and other magic resist items like Spirit Visage that has gotten buff after buff after buff. But this new passive is quite nice. So when receiving skill damage, I'm guessing this means magic damage, not skill damage. You can get a 7-second firmness layer, which can be stacked up to 6 times. Dealing damage to a champion can refresh the duration of the layer. At 6 stacks, you gain 10% movement speed and reduce all magic damage taken by 25%. This item will be very, very good against a lot of AP champions. I think if you're going to be against 2 or more AP champions, then I think this item is definitely worth going, because not only is it still very cheap, it also gives you a lot of good stats. Also, the tier 2 items and the tier 1 items are also very, very nice. So yeah, I think this is definitely an item that you want to go for now. They're also updating Abyssal Mask. They've basically got rid of the whole damage passive from before, and if you don't know what the damage passive was before, it was basically when you are nearby an enemy champion, they take more magic damage from you and your team. This was used a lot on supports, especially champions like you know tanks like Galio, Nautilus, and especially in competitive, because in competitive play you get a lot of AP champions down the bot lane like Lux, Ziggs, etc. Most supports will just go Abyssal Mask first item, and then your Ziggs and your Lux will just deal more damage. But now it has a new passive, so when you take magic damage, you gain 20% of the damage taken as remaining charges for 5 seconds, and when you root an enemy champion, you consume your remaining charges called 400 yards explosion near the first rooted target, dealing magic damage equal to the remaining charge. I think this item is still going to be very, very good on champions like Nautilus. I think this will be very, very good. Alistar, this will also be insanely good, because before you get into range, you might take like a little bit of poke magic damage. Galio as well, I think this item will be very, very good. It just depends how much this damage is going to be. They haven't got the damage numbers in this patch notes, so again, we'll have to kind of wait and see, and we'll have to see what the damage number actually is for this passive. But again, kind of scary because more damage, more numbers, 400-yard explosion. Everyone's gonna be like, whoa, that sounds kind of cool. Let's build this item. This is a weird one. They're updating support items, and they're kind of buffing support even more, and I don't know what I feel about it. I feel like supports are already very, very strong. I feel like you already get a lot of gold from Relic Shield and also Spectral Sickle, and now they're just giving more gold to supports, and I'll explain why. The first thing, they're changing the medium range execution minion bloodline from 50% for melee and 30% for range, for now 75% at range and melee. This is broken. I mean, this is absolutely broken. You'll be able to push minion waves now so damn quickly, even as a range support. You having a 75% execution on a minion with like a range champion, someone like Karma, someone like Nami, that can easily look to push under tower. And when you push the wave under tower, you can then just, you know, look to roam around the map. If you don't want to roam around the map, then you can just look to pressure underneath the tower. I don't really like this. I think that you want melees to have more benefit than range champions, because you want most melee champions to go for this, but you don't really want range champions to go for Relic Shield. But Relic Shield is just a lot safer. It's a lot easier to stack. That's why champions like Karma, Janna, and even Nami go for Relic Shield. They removed you destroy minions, you provide yourself 120% extra gold to yourself and 100% to nearby allied champions. But don't worry, they just changed the wording of it. This is the new wording. So now destroy minions, you destroy minions to provide kill gold to the nearest allied champion. You get 50% of the gold and get an extra 75% gold. Now, for example, a cannon minion, I'm pretty sure is 125 gold. So before you got like, I'm trying to do maths off the top of my head. Before you got like 150 gold roughly for a cannon minion, I guess, because you get 120% of the gold. So you get 125 plus an extra 20%, which is like an extra, what, 26 gold. So yeah, it's basically 150. Now you only get 50% of the gold, which is basically like 75 roughly, but then you also like gain an extra 75. But this means that you now gain more if you kill like a melee minion or a range minion, if they're the only minions available, for example. So most of the time what you want to do at the moment is that you want to wait for the cannon minion, and the reason why you wait for the cannon minion is because you get the 120% gold benefit yourself. Now you still want to do this because cannon minions are just more important to get, and you'll still get kind of more gold overall, but now you're not going to lose too much if you kill like a medium minion, for example, because yes, you're only going to get 50% of the gold, but you're going to get an extra 75 gold each time, and this is included in the mission as well. So this means that you can also probably stack the you know, stack Relic Shield and everything a lot quicker. And now you have a new thing, which is when charged and with enemy teammates around, when the minion's health reaches the execution threshold line, the minion's bar will turn yellow. This is a really, really nice change. I think the big thing with Relic Shield is at times you don't know what range you need to be in to be able to get the stack, because it's really hard at times to have a look at the circle around your champion, because there's not really that much difference between knowing when you're near enough to a teammate or when you're away or too far away from a teammate. So it's really nice that they now changed the color to yellow. However, with this buff being in place for the Relic Shield and also the execution range going up, the charge cooldown is going up by 10 seconds. Now the charge cooldown is basically when you run out of Relic Shield stacks, it takes a little bit of time. It takes 20 seconds until you get the next stack again. Now that 20 seconds is going to go into 30 seconds. So even though you get more gold overall from Relic Shield, they're reducing the charge cooldown, so you kind of have to make sure that you make full use of the Relic Shield and kill the minions that you want to kill, basically. But again, you know, like I said, I think these are crazy changes to supports, and not only that, they're also buffing Spectral Sickle. So the charge cooldown is only going up by 5 seconds. But look at this. Every single time now you proc Spectral Sickle, you gain an extra 15 gold. You now gain 40 gold every single time. So for example, someone like Senna. For Senna, it's really, really easy. You auto attack, you use your first ability at range, and then you can auto attack again to gain Kraken Slayer. You're getting 120 gold now for getting all 3 stacks procced on Spectral Sickle. That's a shit ton of gold. That's a lot of gold. Again, like I said, the cooldown's gone up by 5 seconds, but my god, you get an extra 15 gold now. I mean, I still think that Relic Shield is probably going to be the safest, but even getting like that much extra gold now is absolutely insane for Spectral Sickle. So again, we're gonna have to compare the two and see, you know, what are the best support items to go on what champions. And then you got some system changes. Inhibitor respawn adjustments. Made some adjustments to inhibitors respawning and countdown visual effects. Inhibitors now no longer respawn after the 90-minute mark. I kind of like this because games were kind of prolonged a little bit because the inhibitors were respawning. So games were lasting a little bit longer. So I'm okay that inhibitors don't respawn after 19 minutes. I'm not too sure what this does. We've realized that the time in which each jungle monster is able to be attacked can have a difference up to 2 seconds. If players choose a monster that is slow to respawn, then they can lose their early jungle farming advantage. So making some adjustments to how spawns work. So they shorten the difference between when jungle monsters first spawn and is able to be first attacked. Okay, so it kind of makes sense. So this is basically for a camp like Red Buff, for example. So when Red Buff spawns, it's spawns at 25 seconds, I think it is, but then it takes a little bit of time before you can actually attack it, because even though it spawns at 25 seconds, it doesn't mean you can start attacking it at 25 seconds. It will take a few seconds for it to actually spawn, and then you can attack afterwards. So I guess this will help the jungle clear speed ever so slightly. Again, not too sure what jungle camps. Maybe this might be on all jungle camps. I'm not too sure. We'll have to see. Then we've got some cool new skins. I got skin, Karma skin, Lilia, Yone. We got some cool accessories which are coming out, and that is pretty much everything. And then you'll have your free champion rotation. There you go. That is all the changes that is happening in patch 4.1. Let me know what you think below of all the changes. I'm excited for new champion Urgot. I'm excited for the champion changes. I'm excited for the item changes as well. Not that much ADC changes, but I'll still be doing guides for ADC champions, because like I said, the meta will probably change. But yeah, I appreciate you all. Like I said, later tonight I will be doing the Urgot guide, so make sure you stay tuned for that. And as always, take care, and I'll see you all later tonight for the next Wild Rift video. Peace.